Everyone to the November 18th, 2022 carryover meeting of the Arlington County Board. This is Board Chair Kitty Crystal speaking. I'm joined in person today by my colleagues, Ms. Garvey, Mr. DeFerranti, and Mr. Carantonis. Vice Chairman Dorsey is participating remotely for personal reasons in accordance with state law from the Bluemont area of Arlington County. Tonight, consistent with the adopted ordinance last year, bringing collective bargaining to Arlington, we are hearing presentations as part of our November 2022 meeting from the county manager, followed by statements from representatives of our unions on the fiscal impact analysis of tentative agreements between the county and 3 collective bargaining units. We will then hear from any members of the public that have signed up to speak on this item. Notably, the board will not be discussing at length or taking any action tonight. At our December meeting, we will consider action on a good faith resolution to appropriate funding in fiscal 23 to meet the obligations of the tentative agreements. Tonight, we are here to receive presentations from the parties involved in Arlington's first round of collective bargaining. So I'm going to begin by inviting a presentation from the manager. Mr. Manager, over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening to talk about the fiscal impact under the collective bargaining ordinance the board adopted last July. I'm going to ask Emily Hughes to walk through a brief presentation of the fiscal impact, and then I'm going to speak briefly to 3 non-binding items in the fire arbitration where I do not intend to accept the arbitrator's recommendations.
Thank you.
Over to you, Ms. Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. So start off with just an overview of where we are with collective bargaining. In 2020, the Commonwealth gave localities the option to establish collective bargaining for public employees effective May 1st, 2021. Following this enabling legislation, in July 2021, the County Board amended Chapter 6, Civil Service, of the county's code to allow employees to organize and collectively bargain in good faith over terms and conditions of employment. In mid-March of this year, the Labor Relations Administrator certified 2 bargaining units, the Arlington Coalition of Police, ACOP, as the exclusive representative of the 300 sworn police bargaining unit employees, which includes police officers, police corporals, police sergeants, and police lieutenants, and the Arlington Professional Firefighters and Paramedics International Association of Firefighters Local 2800, or IAFF, as the exclusive representative of the 350 sworn fire employees in ranks of firefighter EMT, fire marshal 1, firefighter 3/EMT 3, lieutenant, and fire/EMS captain 1 and 2. Then on August 1st, the Labor Relations Administrator certified a 3rd bargaining unit, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, District 20, Local 3001, as the exclusive representative of all of the nearly 360 service, labor, and trade bargaining unit employees. Bargaining employees in SLT include a range of job types, including auto mechanics, police public service aides, gardeners, plumbers, wastewater plant operators, and water sewer street service technicians. On the same day that the bargaining unit for SLT was certified, the union made a formal request to Arlington County to commence collective bargaining for an initial agreement covering wages, hours, terms, and conditions of employment for FY 2024. Because of the compressed timeline and the requirements for tentative agreements to be reached by October 1st, the county and AFSCME agreed to focus solely on wages for the 1-year FY 2024 agreement. The union and the county have agreed to begin negotiations in January 2023 for a multi-year agreement governing wages, benefits, and working conditions. There was a tentative agreement reached on September 30th with terms including a 4.5% pay increase on anniversary dates, 4.5% increases to the pay range minimum and maximum, ensuring that all of this bargaining unit's employees will receive the 4.5% salary increase, and a one-time gross bonus of $2,000 to be paid at the beginning of fiscal 2024. Because SLT employees are spread across many of the county's funds, the $1.7 million fiscal impact is somewhat complex. First, let's look at the general fund impact. That's in the first row of numbers that you see on the slide. Given the approximate $35 million projected budget gap in the FY 2024 general fund budget, the impact of the tentative agreement on the general fund, which is $362,000 ongoing funds and $513,000 of one-time funding, is not likely to be absorbed with revenue growth. While the one-time costs of the bonus, $513,000, could be allocated from available funds from FY 2022 closeout, the ongoing impact of $362,000 would have to be funded from either cuts to programs or increases in taxes. If funded by cuts to programs, this impact would equate to cutting 3 FTEs at a cost of approximately $125,000 each, including benefits. That's about the average cost of a position across the county. If funded by an increase in the real estate tax rate, the average residential tax bill would increase $3 to $6 on top of a projected increase of $250 due to the expected 3.2% growth in residential real estate value. Next, a few of the SLT employees' costs are funded through the Stormwater Fund. In this case, the relatively small impact in the Stormwater Fund, $10,000 of ongoing funding and $11,000 of one-time, can be absorbed by revenue growth in the fund. The impact in the Utilities Fund, $278,000 of ongoing and $377,000 of one-time, would result in an increase to the water and sewer rates of 9 cents per 1,000 gallons for ratepayers. This impact on ratepayers would be an increase of $3 to $4 for the average ratepayer in fiscal 2024. Finally, the impact in the Automotive Equipment Fund, $77,000 of ongoing and $89,000 of one-time, would result in an increase in the maintenance fees charged to departments and the general fund and other funds to reflect the increased cost of maintaining the county's fleet. Next, we'll look at the fiscal impact of the tentative agreements and arbitration awards for ACOP, the bargaining unit for police employees. The union and the county reached agreements on 24 articles, 4 of which have a fiscal impact. The remaining 4 articles were determined by arbitration award, which was released last Thursday. The table on this slide outlines the impact of each article that has a fiscal impact and shows the FY 2024 impact of $3.5 million. Note that for wages, these cost estimates are incremental. So, for example, the incremental cost of salaries in fiscal 2026 is $836,100. The actual dollar increase above today in fiscal 2023 is the total $2.9 million you see in the FY 2024 column, plus the $855,200 that you see in FY 2025, plus the $836,100 in fiscal 2026. While the table on the prior slide showed many numbers, the fiscal impact is limited to the general fund, so this one is a bit more straightforward in terms of the impact on the budget. The wages component of this arbitration award can be funded by freezing 26 police positions. Given the current vacancy rates in the department, it is possible to freeze this level of personnel without changes to current operations. Should the recruitment challenges ease, the county manager recommends unfreezing the positions that can be filled and would return to the board with a plan of funding. With the $2.9 million of the wage article being paid for by freezing 26 positions, the remaining $544,000 impact of this potential agreement could be funded by service reductions in other parts of the organization. As in prior years, any service reductions as a part of the FY 2024 budget would be considered with input and engagement from the community. Funding this part of the potential agreement could be funded through either the elimination of approximately 4.4 FTEs, again at the approximate cost of $125,000 per FTE, or the equivalent of 0.1% across-the-board cuts in all general fund departments. In prior fiscal years, when cuts were required to balance the budget, some cuts included items like an AED Cultural Affairs Production Specialist at a cost of $83,000, DES After Hours Building Maintenance Shift Supervisor that was $141,000, a DES Solid Waste Environmental Planner that was $93,000, an Arlington Transit Route 53 Midday Service and Westover Rush Hour Extension Reduction of $244,000, a realignment of DHS's Arlington Employment Center that was $534,000, a reduction in DPR's Facility Monitor Program that was $110,000 for just over 2 FTEs. Alternatively, this $500,000 impact could be funded through an increase to the real estate tax rate. If funded by an increase in the real estate tax rate, the average residential tax bill would increase $5 to $9 on top of the previously mentioned projected increase of $250 due to expected growth in the residential real estate value. And the impacts in FY 2025 and 2026 will need to be considered as a part of the budget processes in those fiscal years as well. Finally, we'll look at the fiscal impact of the tentative agreements and arbitration decisions for IAFF, the Certified Bargaining Unit for Fire Employees. The union and county reached agreement on 60 articles, 4 of which have a fiscal impact. The remaining 39 articles, 8 with a fiscal impact, were determined by arbitration award, which was released this Monday. Like ACOP, the agreements and arbitrator decisions will form the basis of a 3-year agreement for fire. The table on this slide outlines the impact of each of the 12 articles with fiscal impact and shows the FY 2024 impact of $3.4 million. Similar to ACOP, these fiscal impacts are limited to the general fund. Note that like ACOP, the salary cost estimates here are incremental. However, for IAFF, the FY 2024 numbers include $1 million for bonuses. So to determine the cost increase of salaries in FY 2026 over FY 2023, the actual dollar increase is the $1.8 million in FY 2024. That's the ongoing amount in FY 2024, plus the $1.1 million that you see in the fiscal 2025 column, plus the $1 million in fiscal 2026. Given the projected budget gap in FY 2024 general fund budget, the $3.4 million FY 2024 impact cannot be absorbed within the estimated revenue growth without taking service reductions, increasing taxes, or a combination of these options. Any service reductions as a part of the fiscal 2024 budget, as I mentioned before, would be considered with input engagement from the community. Funding this potential agreement could be funded through either the elimination of approximately 27 FTEs at that $125,000 per FTE cost, or the equivalent of 0.65% across the board cuts in all general fund departments. Alternatively, this $3.4 million impact could be funded by increasing the real estate tax rate, an equivalent of an additional $30 to $57 on top of the previously mentioned projected increase of $250. Similar to these options for fiscal 2024, the $1.3 million impacts each in FY 2025 and FY 2026 will need to be considered as a part of the budget process for those fiscal years. That concludes my presentation. Back to Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes. So, Madam Chair and members of the board, in compliance with Section N2C of the Collective Bargaining Ordinance, I'm required as county manager to explain to the board why I would choose not to implement any recommendations or resolutions resulting from non-binding arbitration. So there are 3 items that fall in this non-binding category that are part of the arbitration with the IAFF. One is duration and finality of agreement. The second is prevailing rights, and the third is a provision concerning acting officers. Remind the board that under the county ordinance, binding arbitration is limited to wages, salaries, and any forms of monetary compensation, benefits, working conditions affecting physical health and safety and related equipment, administrative procedures, processes for layoffs or reductions in force, and administrative procedures or processes for promotions. And also under the code, Section 6-30L3, negotiations addressing procedures and impact and implementation of county decisions that substantially impact the general working conditions of employees made pursuant to subsection 630D, County Rights and Authority, will be subject to non-binding arbitration under N2C. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that, but it's... So first, I'm going to decline to implement the IAFF last best offer for duration and finality of agreement. Unlike the county's offer on this issue, the IAFF offer does not include what's called a zipper clause. The zipper clause is necessary to ensure that the county is not tied up with ongoing and potentially endless substantive midterm bargaining akin to the term bargaining that we've just concluded. Given that this potential agreement will be one of the most comprehensive collective bargaining agreements with approximately 100 articles, a zipper clause is reasonable and warranted. It's critical to note that the code does not expressly provide for midterm bargaining. Rather, Code Section 6-30L1 sets forth the parameters for term bargaining to begin by April 1st and to conclude by October 1st of any year where an agreement is sought to be effective at the beginning of the next fiscal year. In addition, the Code Section 6-30L3 allows the union to engage in impact and implementation bargaining during the term of the agreement to address the impact of any county decisions made pursuant to 6-30D that substantially impact the general working conditions of employees as noted above. Second, The IFS last best offer for prevailing rights would entitle the union to engage in midterm bargaining and make proposals 2 times per fiscal year, which would amount to 6 times while the agreement is in place for a 3-year period. There is no cap on the number of proposals that the union can present under this provision. As a result of the operation of both of these provisions for finality of the agreement and prevailing rights, they would eliminate what is an important concept in labor relations, the notion of stability and repose that could be achieved with the execution of this collective bargaining agreement, especially with an agreement of this breadth and scope. Third and last, I'm not accepting the arbitrator's non-binding recommendation on the subject of acting officers. In my view, the fire department's management team must retain the final assignment authority and flexibility to staff all acting officer emergency positions. The management team is best positioned to balance dynamic staffing and schedule needs with professional development and equity opportunities for emerging leaders and officers. There is an agreement to prioritize acting officers in positions at their assigned station. We have agreed to that. The fire department shall incorporate this preference in department staffing policies, as familiarity within crews and area will assist in developing acting supervisors and managers. But ultimately, the final authority needs to reside with the battalion management staff. So the tentative agreement for 3 years before the board would consist of those provisions agreed to by the parties prior to arbitration and the arbitration awards, with the exception of the 3 non-binding awards and recommendations I just discussed. The county's position on these 3 items would be included in the agreement. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. Thank you as well, Ms. Hughes. We are fortunate to have with us this evening representatives from each of the 3 employee unions referenced in the fiscal impact presentation by the county manager to give us their own perspective on the issue of fiscal impact. I'd like to begin by inviting James Rodriguez and Sabrina Jones, who are representing the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees Local 3001, which is to say the Service, Labor, and Trades. Mr. Rodriguez, welcome. You're welcome to join us at the seats here. It's nice to see you, sir.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, board members, Mr. Schwartz. You guys don't know me. My name's James Rodriguez. Welcome, brothers and sisters, firemen. Been a union member since day one, 1994. I've also been the president of ASME the last 12 years. I relinquished that position our last election. Anthony Pistone has now been elected. Times have certainly changed since we last spoke. I don't know what headline I want to ignore. If anyone knows me, I'm genuinely proud to be employed by Arlington County. I'm here tonight on behalf of the co-workers in the Service, Labor, and Trades Unit to endorse the proposal that was hammered out over the past months in accordance with the ordinance. I'm in what's called the Service, Labor, and Trades, or used to be DPW. I'm proud of the work that my co-workers perform without hesitation. The essential services such as water service, emergency repairs, the safe sanitary water plant operations, and all the potholes that we feel are routine or required for the modern life in any metropolitan area. They are essential services that we provide unhesitatingly. The community depends on every service we provide each and every day. We will be there. We ensure that Arlingtonians drive on safe roads in all weather conditions. We keep the drinking water flowing, among other services that keep our community healthy and safe. We shine when we're called to respond to all emergencies and situations with the upcoming cold weather that will challenge our snowplow drivers being top of mind. Not to mention all the hours that were worked diligently on behalf of the county citizens throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. There is no playbook, no page in the playbook for what went on the last 30 months. Our workforce adapted to the ever-changing conditions that were erupting all around us, as I'm sure you're fully aware. My inbox was chattering. Last year, when the board voted unanimously to adopt the collective bargaining in Arlington, our representatives immediately began working on contract proposals. We look forward to bringing those proposals forward in January and negotiating a full and comprehensive contract with county management. In the meantime, the current proposal provides a modest but necessary compensation increase for those essential workers in service, labor, and trades. Through the democratic process of belonging to a union, our membership has voted affirmatively to adopt this agreement, and we hope you too will approve of this agreement. Please keep in mind, in addition to our proposal, our union brothers and sisters at Arlington Rapid Transit, also known as ART, are currently in negotiations with First Transit, a company that's contracted to provide buses throughout the county. We are hoping that ART will receive the same consideration for the essential services they provide. I thank you for your time and attention. Have a good night. And Sabrina, it's all yours.
Sabrina, if you want to, there you go. We can hear you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, board members. Thank you all for your time. My name is Sabrina Jones. I've been a bus operator with Arlington Rapid Transit, affectionately known as ART, for 4 years. I'm also chapter chair for Local 3001. I'm here to support my union brothers and sisters in service, labor, and trade. And I'm asking the county to adopt the proposed compensation agreement because I understand the value of a strong union contract and a fair wages for a fair day's work. Many of my operators like myself drive 8, sometimes 10-hour shifts without guaranteed breaks, and the wages we're currently receiving for our dedication are much lower than our peers in neighboring communities. When considering the compensation package for Arlington County employees tonight, I hope you all consider if the company you do business with share your values. Thank you all for your time.
Ms. Jones, thank you. Mr. Rodriguez, thank you as well. We appreciate hearing from you this evening. Mr. Lynch, Brian Lynch, I know representing Local 2800 of IFF, our firefighters and paramedics. If you'd like to join us, you're welcome to take a seat and present to us your thoughts on the fiscal impact here.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chair Crystal, Vice Chair Diversity, members of the board. My name is Brian Lynch, President of IFF Local 2800, and it is my distinct honor to speak on behalf of my sisters and brothers, your firefighters. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight about the fiscal impacts of the tentative agreements and arbitration awards. We would also like to thank you for being a leader in Virginia on collective bargaining. It's not easy, but in the long run, this community will be stronger for it. I also want to thank our members here tonight. They're here because they believe in collective bargaining and that there is a better path forward for our families and the community they swore to protect than the one we are on right now. Before I touch on the fiscal impacts, since the county manager indicated in his report that the county is unwilling to implement the arbitration award on multiple issues the union prevailed on, I'm compelled to state our opposition to that, including the county claiming that it can unilaterally waive the union's ongoing bargaining rights. I do not have the time to address that in the fiscal matters here tonight, and I ask to be able to address that and share the issues we have with that at another time. As to the fiscal impacts, we ask that you, as responsible stewards of the community's funds, consider the total fiscal impact of the arbitration awards, such as attrition costs, not just the dollars and cents directly attributable to each contract provision. We also ask that you look at what Arbitrator Tower was saying would be the best path forward if she was empowered to enact it, and support us and management on pursuing that path. Arbitrator Tower did not say the county's offer is what was best for the community. In fact, she said something completely different. She said the weight of the evidence supported the union's plan for a step and grade pay scale. Her ruling in the county's favor was based on the cost of transitioning to a new pay structure in 1 year as we had proposed. If she could, she would move the open range pay scale to a step and grade pay scale over the length of the contract. But she did not have the power to modify our proposal. She did not make such a statement about any other issues. She went out of her way to tell us there is a better path. We're asking for the support of the board in continuing our discussions on that third path, a transition to a grade and step plan over time, including the time to negotiate the details. This would also allow us to work out any differences of opinion on the costs in a collaborative manner. a member of management's negotiating team, graciously offered to meet with us about the costs, and we're looking forward to having that meeting. We have had great discussions with county staffs over the weeks since arbitration about how to accomplish this. They think it's a realistic possibility, and so do we. I will be honest that some of the best ideas on how to accomplish this came from county staff. We would like to continue those conversations with county staff and bring in Mr. Schwartz, with whom we've had joint success in the past. Speaking of the county staff, one of them said something to me before the arbitration verdict came out that stuck with me and has guided my thinking on this. To paraphrase, it was that winning and losing was the wrong way to think about this. When I look back at how we were all in this room last spring and summer enacting collective bargaining, we all had a vision of what that looked like, of labor and management collaboratively working together to create solutions that work for both workers and the community. A stronger, safer community. It's clear we never got there on salaries in the time we thought we would. But we are on the cusp of doing exactly that. Mr. Manager and members of the board, with time, your support, and the guidance that Arbitrator Tower provided, we can make the promise that collective bargaining holds for firefighters in the community we protect a reality. We hope you join us in that effort. Thank you for your time and consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. We appreciate that, and please do stay close. All right, our final representative is Randall Mason on behalf of the Arlington Coalition of Police. Welcome, Mr. Mason.
Randall Mason, I'm president of the police union. Slide, please. Going through this process, I want to first thank the county board for enacting the ordinance. We've been on non-economic issues. We've been able to make some real changes. We've made changes for performance evaluations, keeping employees informed of how things are going through IA and what the time frame is so they're not left in limbo. We fixed some issues with promotions that had been going on for 15 years since I've been here. So we've been able to make some real progress, some meaningful changes on the non-economic issues. Without bargaining, we would not have been able to accomplish that. Otherwise, it would have been done during the 15 years I've been here. So thank you for that. On economic issues, we never were able to collectively come together and that's why we ended up in arbitration. ACOP's last best offer was completely around recruiting and retaining our officers. As you're going to see in a couple slides, we're 60 officers short, 16%, and we need more bodies, so we don't go to mandatory overtime, and we limit the amount of overtime necessary just to fill positions. The county's offer did not match that goal, and it's telling by them freezing 60 positions to be able to fund it. I'm sorry, 28, 26 positions to be able to fund it. So we just weren't on the same goal, and I think that was a hindrance of us being able to come to an agreement rather than having to go to arbitration. Slide, please. What came out in our arbitration was that this is the worst staffing crisis we've had in 30 years. Our overtime, just to make minimum staffing, has gone to 7,000 hours last year. It's on pace to break that this year. The year before, it was 4,000. We're right on the verge of mandatory overtime, and we actually had to come up with a process for how mandatory overtime is going to be implemented, and we were able to do that through collective bargaining. So again, I am very grateful that collective bargaining has gone through to make sure that mandatory overtime does go out in a fair manner. And we also, we're losing people faster than we can hire them. Year to date, we've lost 52 officers. We've only hired 29. 5 more are scheduled to leave by February 1st. And finally, the Amazon moving in, once they finally get here, we don't want to be even further behind the 8 ball. We expect them, Chief Penn sent a work group to Seattle to see how much of a suck headquarters was. One was on the Seattle police force. So we do expect a need for more officers once they're fully moved in, and we don't want to be so far behind the 8 ball that we're unable to catch up at that time. Overall, our vacancy rate is at 16%. So slide, please. The next question you probably have is how do we compare to our jurisdictions around us? The only one that's worse than us is Alexandria, which shouldn't come much of a surprise to most of you, since all of you have known that Alexandria has historically been the worst paying agency in the area. Slide, please. Alexandria went through collective bargaining this year as well. They were able to successfully negotiate a contract and they negotiated a really good one. They're getting a 19% starting salary increase in year one. They have wage increases for years 2 and years 3 on their scale system. And by year 3, it's a 24% increase of where they currently are. Years 2 and 3, their veteran officers are going to see 7% growth. And I bring this up because of the final piece that I am very, very scared of for Arlington and other jurisdictions is within their collective bargaining. I could leave here today and I will get inserted in Alexandria at step 15 on their pay scale because I've been here, I have 15 years of experience. And why that matters is what I'm going to show you on the next slide. We're currently working through all of our officers to see how many this affects, where they could leave tomorrow and make more money in Alexandria, but it ranges from a couple $1,000s to $17,000 by year 3. And that's not a position we want to be in. That's has to do with us being an open range and them being on a step system, and it worries me that people are going to be able to leave and be inserted directly into their pay scale based on their years of service. Slide, please. So other than Alexandria, our vacancy rate is 33% worse than the other neighboring jurisdictions. So we got to consider why is that. Slide. I put our compensation philosophy. Our goal is to recruit officers. We're having problems doing that. So why is that? And I think part of it is the competitive pay portion of it. Slide, please. Arlington is very, very expensive to live in. If you're comparing us dollar for dollar to Prince William, of course the salaries are different. We would like to live in Arlington, but only under 40% of our officers do. 70% of officers who do live in Arlington, they rent. And 55% of those who rent receive some type of reduced rent and have to provide extra services to get that reduced rent. Slide, please. The other main issue is in the county's financial analyst in arbitration said that inflation is estimated to be at 8.28% for the DC region. This is where I'm going to say SLT and Fireside getting a 4.5% merit increase. That's effectively without a COLA, it's a wage decrease. We got to look to do a little bit better across the board. Slide, please. So going back to the compensation philosophy, I've already talked about how Alexandria is passing us when we go through the years. But the fair and competitive pay is what I think is contributing to some of our attrition. Slide. I didn't know it was this bad, and you guys didn't either through all our talks last year. I didn't know it until I got into the numbers this year. As of the first paycheck in October, 204 out of 304 officers are being paid less than someone their junior in the same rank as them. That's a direct result of the open range system. Arlington, between the ACOP and the county, we could only come up with one other jurisdiction that uses an open range system. Everywhere else has a step system, and it's so things like this don't occur. There's only one day in the entire year where an open range system works, and that is the last day of the fiscal year. The very next day, you're going to have leapfrogging again. With a step system, you don't have that, which is why 99% of police departments are in a step system. Slide, please. So solutions, we really need to get the step system. Just like the fire department, we shot too high. We wanted to get to a wage system in 1 year. And just going to a wage system, we estimate to be about $9 million if you do it in a single year. Even just staying at $60,000, getting to a wage step system, it's going to cost money. Just like Fireside, if you look at page 47 of our arbitrator's decision, he says that something needs to be done about this. 66% of our officers being paid in an unfair manner isn't an aberration. It's something that needs to be addressed. A non-monetary way to fix some of them would be to make all of our anniversary dates go back to our hire dates. There was a couple years where they were changing it to your promotion date, and that has caused a lot of the leapfrogging issues. But making everybody go back to anniversary dates would have a small cost to the county, but it would be very, very, very small in comparison to everything else, and it would get rid of some of the leapfrogging. And finally, I believe that an education premium is needed. The comparable jurisdictions that we used, that the county used and we used, the most of them have some type of education premium. You can skip this slide. So arbitration on financial issues was set up to be non-binding. I'll be the first to admit that had ACOP won, I'd be sitting here pounding the table saying, you need to give us our $15 million or however much. Of course I would, of course. But I also believe, and I think you will agree, that had the police department and fire department both won, and you were looking at a $35 million in year one cost, that you would be asking us to go back to the table and renegotiate. And that's what I'm asking from you guys today. Page 2 of his presentation, it gives you the ability to order us in the county back to the table to come up with a better solution. Arbitration in this case was baseball arbitration. One side wins, one side loses. There's no meeting in the middle, and there's a lot of middle ground between our two proposals. And I hope that we're able to get there. Thank you.
Mr. Mason, thank you. And thank you for any of your colleagues who are here this evening. Thank you again to all three of our speakers this evening. Ms. Jacobs, do we have any public comment speakers on this issue tonight?
We do not.
Thank you very much. So as noted earlier, the board will not take any action on tentative agreements or on that good faith resolution to fund the outcomes of collective bargaining and arbitration until our December meeting. So our deliberations will hold for that time. We do, however, have an opportunity to hear from both our representatives of the employee groups as well as the unions, as well as management and Department of Management and Finance. So colleagues, if you have questions, we do have this opportunity to raise them. I'm going to ask just one clarifying one, perhaps for our manager or maybe our labor relations counsel. The last best and final offer system or baseball arbitration, is that a function of the ordinance, or was that a system of arbitration agreed upon by the two parties going into arbitration? And if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself for the record, that would be great.
Okay. My name is Catherine Naylor. I'm the Chief Labor Relations Officer for Arlington County. The last best offer scheme is basically within the ordinance.
Okay.
And the LRA that was appointed basically made procedures that are consistent with that in terms of the last best offers, and that the arbitrator must pick one or the other and cannot change either in doing so.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions? Mr. Dorsey, don't want to lose the opportunity to invite you to speak. As you're online. All right.
Madam Chair.
Yes, please, Mr. DeFerranti.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I couldn't unmute fast enough, but not for right now. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Mr. DeFerranti.
I'll have a slightly longer way of reaching the same point. I am very much listening and glad to have all of the presentations. And I think before saying more, I want to immerse myself and dig into the materials. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Oh, Ms. Garvey.
Yeah, I think I just want to thank everybody for coming today. You've given us a lot to think about, and appreciate a lot of the words and the service of everybody here. And I appreciate all the work that's gone by our staff and our negotiators. This has been a huge lift to get us this far, and we've got a ways more to go, and appreciate where we are now. And I, too, will be taking some time to think through what we've heard.
Thank you. And Mr. Kieran-Donis.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, thank you, everybody, for having worked so hard to get the very first negotiation going. And that goes also the other part of the negotiation. I really appreciate that. A lot of things to think about here, including the structural nature of, a step system versus an open range system. So we will have to think and study very carefully the outcomes of this negotiation and the arbitration. Thank you.
Agreed, Mr. Kieran-Donis. I think that is the core of the issues before us. I will not speak long. I don't want to subject anybody else to this squeaking voice. But I'll thank all of those who've come for your work as well. I just want to note, because we will be less likely to talk in December about the non-economic articles, I just want to highlight, as I think was made by many of our representatives this evening, as well as management, of the nearly 100 articles, I believe, negotiated or arbitrated with fire, 24 with police, are many that we will not discuss in our fiscal impact or good faith resolution conversation. But as so many have talked about, they are really important to the working conditions of the men and women who serve in the Arlington Fire and Police Departments. And so I really appreciate the thoughtful work that has gone by the union representatives into understanding the biggest needs and demands on the working conditions facing your colleagues, as well as management's participation in those conversations to ensure that those articles could be reached by resolution or, in a few cases, arbitration. We appreciate the ongoing conversations. I think I'll associate myself again with Mr. Karandonis' comments. The point about the migration to the step and grade system, I think, is the topic of conversation over the next month, as well as possibly in future 3-year negotiation terms. For now, again, thank you all for coming out. I'm going to move that we close the public hearing on items 37A through C. Do I have a second? Seconded by Ms. Garvey. Unless there are any questions, all those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Dorsey, your vote?
He's muted.
I know it's hard to move fast.
I'm sorry, Mr. Dorsey votes aye.
Thank you so much. All right, we appreciate that, Mr. Vice Chairman. Ms. Jacobs, any other items to come before the board today?
No, there is not.
All right, without objection, we are adjourned for our November meeting. Thank you, everyone. Thank
And
you.
get better, Madam Chair.